New for August on 4, Golden Girls meet soap in The Empty Nest.
You're dealing with bad guys, crazed men who don't care what happens to you as long as they get what they want.
Those are the guys I date, Daddy.
In my town, we didn't have dating. You washed your hair every Saturday night, and then when you were 14, you married your cousin.
Aside from you and your sisters, she is the only living, caring being in my life right now who doesn't drink from a toilet.
Empty Nest, new for Fridays at 9 on 4.
With extracts from the likes of Dragonflight and Dragon's Dawn, Anne McCaffrey is this week's woman writer, a sci-fi lady with a passion for fire-breathing friends who regard Cinderella as a wimp, is next.
Diet Lilt, when you're feeling good, tastes like it should. Diet Lilt, with a totally tropical taste.
Watch out for the XXX brand. XXX, the extra strong mint from Roundtree's.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by.
This summer, don't let the kids drive you to distraction. Take them on a train. Buy a cheap day return during the summer holidays and 2 kids go for £1 each. There are so many places you can take them. And bring them back. Very tired. £1 on Network Southeast.
Hello?
Anthony? Oh, congratulations on your exam results.
Grandma, I failed.
You failed? What do you mean you failed?
I mean I failed. Maths, English, physics, geography, German, woodwork, art. I failed.
You didn't pass anything?
Pottery.
Pottery? Very useful. Anthony, people will always need plates. Anything else?
And sociology.
An ology? He gets an ology and he says he's failed. You get an ology, you're a scientist.
Whether it's well done or hard luck, a phone call says a lot.
The most brilliant boys, the teachers who are wrong, you know, they can't mark. A lot of them can't see.
British Telecom. It's you we answer to.
Heinz spaghetti.
You never grow out of Heinz spaghetti.
We'd have saved £30 on our holiday.
Get away.
Psst, these two got £100 off their holiday with Lampoli.
Get away.
Here, she saved £15 booking at Lampoli. Get away.
You guys come with Lampoli? Could have saved yourself £100.
Get away.
We discount every holiday we sell. Get away for less with Lampoli.
You're going to need your anger. You're going to need a lot.
In the sport of traitors, only the strong survive.
It was injected with a fast-acting toxin.
I did what I was paid to do, no more, no less.
Ordinary thieves don't steal snapshots.
I didn't know her. Why should I fear her?
I love you, and I don't want to lose you.
I'm sending you back, Alec.
Where?
To where it all began.
The ruthless betrayers, Albert Finney, George Segal and Anthony Quayle in Brian Forbes' The Endless Game, beginning on Sunday night at 10:15 on 4.
Now a chance to meet the person behind the book, as this week's woman writer, Anne McCaffrey, talks volumes.
I'm an Irish-American, writer of science fiction, resident now in Ireland. My hair is silver, my eyes are green, and I freckle. The rest is subject to change without notice. In 1968, my aunt franked me to a trip to England, Scotland, and Ireland. And it wasn't until I got to Ireland that I realized that this was a country where I could live quite happily. I didn't realize I would. In fact, I was crying when the plane took off back home. And then 2 years later, it became necessary for me to change my environment, and I thought of Ireland. I thought of a place where my mother would feel safe. I can write anywhere, so it doesn't matter. But I felt comfortable in Ireland, so that's where I came.
Rookbat, in the Sagittarian sector of space, was a golden G-type star. It had 5 planets. The third was enveloped by air man could breathe, boasted water he could drink, and possessed a gravity that permitted him to walk confidently erect. When men first settled on Rookbat's third planet and named it Pern, they had taken little notice of a stranger planet swinging around its adopted sun in a wildly eccentric orbit. The desperate path it took came close to Pern every 200 years when it showered Pern with a deadly spore called thread by the Pernese, which devoured all living things. With the ingenuity of their Terran forebears, the Pernese biogenetically altered a creature native to their new world, a creature resembling the dragons of Earth folklore, giant, graceful, winged, fire-breathing beasts, linked by mind and love with the men and women who rode them to char thread from Pern's skies, creating a new legend, the Dragon Riders of Pern.
I based dragons very loosely on horses. The horses are rather stupid creatures. You can have a very bright horse with his own abilities, but they are rather limited. Dragons, because you can ride them, are slightly analogous to horses, but much, much improved. I don't have wars in my books. I am fed up to here in wars. But I do have menaces of all kinds. I have the thread, which is a mycorrhizoid spore that falls from the heavens onto my planet. You can have other kinds of dangers and conflicts without fighting humans, or humanoids, or aliens. There are many who insist that because I use dragons, I'm writing fantasy. I'm not. My dragons have a solid scientific basis. They breathe they eat phosphine-bearing rock, and they belch gas because phosphine gas ignites when it hits oxygen. It's really very simple. But they were biogenetically engineered from an indigenous life form on Pern. There is more science in the books, but I can't explain it from the point of view of my people at that time on Pern. Hard science, which is what people like Isaac Asimov or Dave Brin, Greg Benford write, deals generally with some sort of a scientific premise that they are exploring. I write softcore science fiction.
Royce.
Royce. R-O-Y-C-E. Thank you.
I haven't got the rolls.
That's true enough.
We don't work well enough.
Well, living in Ireland as I do, I wasn't all that aware of what was happening in the science fiction fan milieu in the States. And in 1978, I was at a convention in Baltimore, Maryland, and suddenly discovered that, lo and behold, Anne McCaffrey had become a cult figure. And I wasn't quite sure how cult figures are supposed to act. So I just went on the way I usually do. I was the first writer of science fiction to get on the New York Times bestseller hardcover list. Even Isaac and Arthur Clarke had to wait. That's one for us girls. Science fiction in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was pulp. It was written for the emerging adolescent boy at a male-dominated readership. In the 1960s, science fiction writers themselves decided that they wanted to upgrade the product. They would do that by screening their work, by submitting it to a workshop situation once a year, and trying to improve what they were doing and how they were saying it. It's rather devastating to sit in a room with 25 other professional writers who know what you should be doing and have them tell you what you should do with your story. Mind you, you also had 25 different ideas, so you could pick the one you wanted. Harlan Ellison used to really give out stink to me. Damn it, McCaffrey! You're thinking with your ass. You're thinking slick magazine. We're not writing slick magazines for stupid housewives to read under dryers. We're writing science fiction. And he was rather blunt, but he also had a point. I was writing from one voice, and I learned to write from another one, from a more universal voice, because at that time in the 60s, our readership was dominantly male. It was when Star Trek came that women realized they could read science fiction and enjoy it. I have blessed Spock. Oh, I have blessed Spock. I criticized science fiction in the 50s because they weren't portraying women properly. Ah, there she was screaming in the corner. Oh, my boy's being beaten up. No, what will I do? Oh, eek. I wouldn't have been standing there in the corner screaming. I'd have been in there with something, trying to help my guy out. So this was totally unrealistic as far as women were concerned. I've got 9 awards. Everything that's going. I'm not greedy. It's time for other people to get them. I got my Hugo. I got my Hugo in 1968 when I needed it.
Was it true you were the first woman?
To win an award for writing science fiction, there had been other women getting awards as fanzine writers and as artists. But I was the first woman writer. There is not a Cinderella theme in Anne McCaffrey's books because Cinderella was a wimp. And none of my major characters, women, are wimps. They're strong people. In fact, they are victims who become survivors. This is the important thing. I'm dealing with people who are in an untenuous position, untenable position. And they manage to change circumstances to suit themselves, to get where they want to be. That is not Cinderella. She waited until Prince Charming came with a glass slipper and it fit her foot. Really. What I've achieved for women in science fiction is science fiction that is women-oriented, that they can read with a great deal of enjoyment because my viewpoint characters are women, strong women, role models, if you want to use the new psychological term. I was rather interesting to discover that I was developing these role models for people when really all I was doing was telling a story. Suddenly, Falar's bronze dragon Nement, with a daring burst of speed, enveloped Ramoth in his wings, his neck winding tightly about the golden queen dragon, and then Plessa exploded back into her body, every nerve throbbing as she echoed the sensations her dragon experienced. Don't faint, you fool! Stay with her! Falar's hands roughly sustained her. She clutched at him, touching bare skin, aroused by the dragon's mating. Bring her back! How? Plessa cried, unable to comprehend what could possibly entice Ramoth from such glory. Yet she was very much aware of Falar's disturbing proximity. Think with her. She cannot go between. Stay with her. Trembling at the thought of losing Ramoth, Plessa sought her dragon, still locked with Nement. The mating passion of the two dragons spiraled wide to include Plessa. With a longing cry, she clung to Falar. She felt his hard arms lifting her up, his
mouth fastened on hers as she drowned deep in another unexpected flood of desire. Now we bring them safely home. I think I'm a romantic. I think I am a dyed-in-the-wool, optimistic romantic, and I make no apologies for it at all. I put romance into science fiction. I did it deliberately. I put emotion into science fiction and used it as a tool of the trade. It shocked quite a few people when I first started out, but more and more writers realized that the emotional contact, the characterization of people, had to be more valid in terms of personal behavior. And that's when science fiction took a huge leap forward and started interesting more and more people because it was valid, it was vibrant. It's an stimulating field to be in. I mean, you can do anything you want in science fiction. You can talk about any subject that, if you tried to put it in a contemporary book, it'd be censored. You couldn't do it. People wouldn't read it. They wouldn't take it seriously. In science fiction, they will.
Where's the Spider-Man book? Can you find it? There! There's a Spider-Man book.
The typical science fiction reader reads. I mean, he'll go through 10, 15 books a week. Well, you've got over 1,100 new titles coming out in the field every year, so you've got to read rather fast to get through half of them. I used to be able to read everything that came out in the 60s. I did. I read everything that came out. I couldn't do that anymore. Now, there is a difference between the reader and the fan. The fan wants his writers to be faces and personalities and someone they can touch, someone they can talk to. Sometimes they ask you the most ridiculous questions, but you know it's because they want to say something to you. They want a give and take between reader and writer, which is unusual in science fiction. I don't think you have that in any other field. You might have had it when the Westerns were what everyone was reading. Mystery readers are sort of, not secretive, but this is something you sort of relish all by yourself, sort of on a dark night. And the same thing with the horror stories, because you read them to get scared. It's just one of the more unusual facets of science fiction and fantasy, that you do have this feedback, this dialogue between reader and writer.
Why is music a recurring theme in your books?
Because I'm a failed singer, but I like to sing still. I don't do that much of it, but I'll do my party piece for you if you'd like.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Completely round is the perfect pearl the oyster manufactures. Completely round is the steering wheel that leads to compound fractures. Completely round is the steering wheel. Oh dear, I blew it again. That's my trouble. I can't remember the lyrics. The circle shape is quite renowned, and sad to say it can be found in the dirty, low-down run around my true love gave to me. Yes, my true love. I had a lonely childhood because I was a brat. I was without doubt the most opinionated, domineering, outrageous brat. In fact, at a convention last year, when I mentioned this, people were going, oh, no, no, no. And I said, oh, yes, yes, yes. And a lady got up in the back of the room and she said, yes, yes, yes. I lived behind her and I wouldn't let Anne McCaffrey play in my backyard. Why? I was just that sort of an independent person. I had two brothers, one older, one younger. We fought, like everybody does. I was just a contentious child, part of my individuality. But it drove me into myself. It made me read. It made me try to write out the things that bothered me. Well, I invented friendships with animals. I had my cats talking to me. And when I was allowed to ride, I would talk to the horse. Don't you like me? The dragon asked the small boy. His eyes whirled with anxiety, and his tone was so piteous that Kevin staggered forward and threw his arms around the dragon's neck, stroking his eye ridges, patting the damp, soft hide,
opening the fragile-looking wings to dry them, and wordlessly assuring the hatchling over and over again that he was the most perfect, most beautiful, most beloved dragon in the weir, in all the weirs of Pern. Between dragons and humans, yes, I have created the ultimate friendship. How many of us would not feel happier if we did have someone who knew exactly what we felt and supported us constantly, even when we were wrong? If we had that kind of support, someone standing behind us, we'd be a lot happier. We'd feel a lot more adequate.
My friend here, he's a fire lizard. He thinks he's as good as a dragon, but he's really a fire lizard. And in a sense, Pern is very real for me. It has brought me wonderful friends and brought me out of my shell. And it's been very, very good for me.
For some of my fans, science fiction has become an alternative world. My world has become the place they would rather live in. This can be dangerous. I stress to these people that Pern doesn't exist except in my imagination and in my books. And yet I can't help, I'm complimented that it's my world they want to live in, but I also worry that they're so willing to escape reality that they need someplace else to go. Not with today's world that I blame them. I just don't want to be responsible for, how do I say it? I don't want to be responsible for their rejection of where they actually have to live.
This world can be real to me if I want it to be, if I'm so in the mood, but I like her world better. It just holds more fascination for me. It's just more interesting to me. Maybe it has more of a strife in it or less in it. Maybe it's a more simple world. Maybe that's what it is. We get up every day and we fight to live. I don't know. But her world's a real. This is why I like her.
You open a book and you go on vacation to this other world where you can do other things, be other people, and you're not limited. In this world, I'm limited to me. I'm limited in what I can do, how I can look, how I can act, by the customs of my people. And I can become something else. And her characters and her stories and her books are real enough that I can become, I can live in that world. I can do those things, and it's great. I love it.
I do feel ambivalent about the adulation because I know perfectly well what I am. I know what happens inside my head. And while on one hand it's, it's great to be the writer and, everyone kowtowing to and Mrs. McCaffrey this and Mrs. McCaffrey that. But when I'm home here in Ireland, I'm Anne McCaffrey, the Yank who keeps horses. And that keeps my head down to the proper size. And then, too, I've got to go and sit down at that keyboard and write. That's the compulsion in me, not so much to read. I leave that for the evenings when I have free time. But I can't not write. And that is what makes the writer. Everyone has a novel inside them. Everyone has things that could be put down. But it only comes alive if they put it down. They can't tell me the idea, because then it will be my idea, and my experience will be running the novel. But those people who have an idea, sit down and write it. Not tomorrow, today, and start. All my books are love stories. Either the love between people, the love between people and species, different species, the affection, the comradeship, the partnership. That's what the dragons are about. Partnerships between men, women, and these marvelous beasts. I have an animal affinity. I wouldn't raise horses and cats and dogs if I didn't. I'm comfortable around animals. They're what I miss when I'm traveling.
There you go. There you go. Isn't that great, Anne?
Oh, that was super.
Real ability.
My God, you've got some leap in you.
In a year's time.
Ah, he's a great fella.
Chased around.
Yeah.
Chased around.
Oh, you're a grand lad.
Chased around.
So I have to, right. But I also have to keep in contact with the horses. That's a very sustaining and stabilizing factor in my life. I love them. I love to watch them. I come up here whenever I can. Just the sheer joy of watching them move when they're doing it well. They're not a hobby. They are a business that Derville and I run together. And William is our trainer. We raise and train 3-day eventers. Well, thanks to Derville, she mainly runs the business, which is 47 acres and about 19 horses at the moment.
Hi, Gertie. You're hunting tomorrow, aren't you?
The best hunter in Ireland, honey, aren't you?
Where's she going off?
Bel Air, I think.
Oh, okay.
The more ditches, the better.
Yeah. We confer, and I'm up here whenever I can. But my contribution to Dragonhold Stables is writing and getting the money to finance it.
Loves his dinner, loves everything.
He wouldn't put his head over the door before, would he?
Wouldn't let you pet him before.
That's right. My God, he's settled in nicely, hasn't he?
My latest book, The Caradine Touch,
It is contemporary fiction. Well, in that it's set here in Ireland in 1970. I'm more nervous about science fiction, writing contemporary than science fiction, because I'm going out of my field and into another where I may not be as well known. I do attract readers from other fields. I must have a broad readership to sell as many books as I do. But you're always nervous when a book comes out. And this one, because I worked so hard on it and put so much of my life here in Ireland in it, means a great deal to me. The Caradine Touch is about a girl and her father and an Irish home.
And change the rein through the middle.
It's a romance. It's a guidebook to the horse industry at the time. And deals with people who breed and train horses. I had wanted to write something in Ireland, set in Ireland, and set from the Irish viewpoint rather than from an American viewpoint. But I wasn't so presumptuous as to deal with the troubles. I wanted to deal with something more closely aligned to the Irish character, which is their horses. The best horses, the most versatile horses in the world, come from Ireland. And I wanted to celebrate that, starting with a youngster, just as I had youngsters around me when I first started my stables, 13, 14-year-olds who were horse mad, and discuss this problem. Well, Spring Farm came on the market. It was at the bottom of my road, the Kilquade Road. So I went along with the estate agent, and I looked through the house, which was absolutely magnificent. I could see a lot of possibilities. It needed a lot of work, to be sure, but the fabric was there. Oh, I could see it alive. I could see it peopled with fine horses and dedicated horse people, and a whole family there. And that's when the idea coalesced into a form I could put it in. And I named it Cornana, which means in Irish, the Hill of the Beast. To find the heart of Cornana, continue on the Kilcoe Road, past the formal entrance, past the high wall that girds the menage, the outdoor exercising ring, and to the strap iron gate set between the old coach house and the stable block. Turn into the courtyard, past Cowburns, and right into the yard, its cobbled surface neatly swept on this February evening. The house, enlarged from an original farm manor of the late 1600s, faces east to the sea, with a gracious prospect of the undulating main fields and pastures of the estate. Past the house on the right are the extensive stables, and then the huge walled garden, established in the mid-18th century to amuse and delight the ladies of Cornana, sheltered from wind and storm, watered by the little stream that flows down from the hills and into the sea at Kilcool. Old fig trees cling to its walls, pear, apple, and cherry trees flourish, and raspberry, gooseberry, and quince bear blossom and fruit in their time. is a romance, yes. My books are romantic. That's as much a part of the condition of the human being as anything else, particularly a female. It's part of the fun. I would like a tall, handsome man to sweep me off my feet, except he's more apt to be looking at my daughter. Wish fulfillment, heavens, why write if you're not fulfilling some need or dream of your own? It's harmless.